Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating, honestly pretty complex journey of how our food actually gets from the dirt to our dinner plates. We grab a slice of bread or a bowl of rice and almost never think about the massive, orchestrated effort it took to make it. Today, we're breaking down the science of crop production and management, tracing the path from a single tiny seed all the way up to those massive storage silos. So let's just shatter a massive misconception right out of the gate. If you're picturing farming as this old-fashioned, purely low-tech gig relying on just manual labor and guesswork, well, you're missing the modern reality. Farming and agriculture today represent a major hub for the latest scientific advancements. The modern agricultural landscape is incredibly scientific, relying heavily on complex biology, precision engineering, and some really incredible ecological management. Okay, so here's the exact sequence we'll be tracking on our farm-to-granary journey today. We've got 1. Basics of agriculture. 2. Preparing soil and sowing. 3. Nourishing the soil. 4. Irrigation and protection. 5. The final harvest. And 6. The nitrogen cycle and beyond.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the basics of agriculture.
So the word agriculture itself actually comes from two roots. You've got ager, which means field, and cultura, meaning cultivation. And the key thing to remember here is that a crop isn't just your backyard tomato garden. By definition, we're talking about a massive, large-scale planting of the exact same type of plants in one place, totally engineered to maximize food production. Now, farmers categorize these massive operations primarily in two ways. First, by purpose, so food crops for human consumption, versus cash crops grown specifically for profit. And second, they categorize by timing. Farmers balance their crops across 3 distinct growing seasons, like Kharif during the rainy monsoon, Rabi in the cooler winter, and Zaid in the brief summer. Because as you'd guess, every crop demands its own specific temperature and rainfall to actually survive and thrive.
Moving right along to Section 2, preparing soil and sowing.
Look, you can't just toss a seed onto hard dirt and hope for the best. It takes a precise 4-step sequence. First up is plowing, or tilling. And this isn't just to poke holes. Turning the soil traps air deep underground so future roots can actually breathe. Then, farmers break down those large, hard clumps of dirt called crumbs. Step 3 is absolutely crucial, picking high-quality, disease-resistant seeds. And only then do we finally reach Step 4, which is sowing those seeds into that perfectly aerated soil. And what's really cool is seeing the evolution of the tools used for all this. You've got the traditional wooden plow, which totally relies on animal or manual labor. But compare that to a modern, tractor-driven cultivator that can turn massive tracts of land in a fraction of the time. And for sowing, farmers use a high-tech seed drill. It's an incredibly precise piece of engineering designed to pipe seeds into the earth at the exact uniform depth and spacing needed.
All right, on to Section 3, nourishing the soil.
So as our crops grow, they're rapidly stripping the soil of nutrients. It's kind of like a battery draining. To stop this, farmers have to manually add organic lifeblood back into the earth. They really focus on humus, which is this dark, super nutrient-rich material that forms from decayed plant and animal matter. When farmers mix in organic manure, it doesn't just replenish nutrients, it literally changes the soil's texture and makes it way better at holding on to water. And beyond just adding manure, farmers use some pretty brilliant natural problem-solving to keep the soil fertile. Take crop rotation. By alternating nutrient-hungry cereals with leguminous crops, think peas or beans, something magical happens. Symbiotic bacteria in the roots of those peas literally pull nitrogen out of the air, naturally fertilizing the field for whatever grows there next. Or, alternatively, they might just leave a field fallow, meaning unplanted, to let the earth take a breather and naturally regenerate on its own. Which brings us to Section 4, irrigation and protection. Modern agriculture is all about controlling exactly when and how plants get water, and we call this irrigation. You might see a sprinkler system used, which kind of acts like artificial rain over uneven land. But then you have drip irrigation, which is an absolute marvel of efficiency. It uses a whole network of pipes to deliver water drop by drop directly to the root zone of the plant. It pretty much eliminates water waste from evaporation entirely. But here's the catch. Water also fuels the enemy. And that enemy is weeds. These are aggressive, unwanted plants that pop up and try to choke out the cultivated crops, stealing their nutrients, space, and sunlight. So to protect the harvest, farmers either have to get out there and uproot them manually or use weedicides. These are highly specialized chemicals scientifically engineered to wipe out the weeds without harming a single leaf of the actual crop.
Okay, Section 5, the final harvest.
Now, harvesting is almost never just one quick action. It's actually a meticulous, multi-step sequence. First, you've got to cut the crop, which is either done by hand with a curved sickle or by using these massive combine machines. But you can't eat it yet. The crop has to move down the line, through threshing, then winnowing, and finally into specialized large-scale storage.
Let's zoom in on those middle steps for a second. Threshing is basically the brute force beating of the plant to loosen up the edible grain from the tough outer husk. But that leaves you with a really messy mixture. And that's where winnowing comes in. By dropping the mixture from a height, the wind naturally just blows away the lighter, useless chaff, and the heavier, nutrient-dense grains fall straight down into a nice, clean pile.
So, once everything is perfectly separated, you're left with literal tons of pure grain. But leaving it sitting around exposed is a recipe for disaster, from moisture, insects, or rats. To protect our food on a massive scale, we use giant, specialized structures. We're talking towering metal silos, sprawling godowns, and highly controlled granaries. These keep the whole supply totally secure until it's ready to ship out to your local grocery store.
Finally, let's hit Section 6, the nitrogen cycle and beyond. You know, life on a farm is completely dictated by nitrogen. But plants can't just breathe it in from the air. It's a whole process. It starts with nitrogen fixation, where atmospheric nitrogen is literally zapped by lightning or grabbed by soil bacteria and turned into a usable form. Then we move to assimilation, where the plants absorb these new nutrients up through their roots to build the proteins that eventually feed us.
But what happens when living things die? Well, the cycle keeps spinning through a process called ammonification. Tiny microorganisms act as nature's ultimate recycling crew, breaking down dead organic matter and converting that trapped nitrogen into ammonia. Almost immediately, specialized nitrifying bacteria jump in, converting that ammonia into nitrites and nitrates. And boom, perfect usable plant fuel goes right back into the dirt.
And the whole thing brilliantly completes itself with denitrification. Because, honestly, not all the nitrates get absorbed by the plants. So denitrifying bacteria come along and convert the leftover soil nitrates back into pure nitrogen gas. That gas releases right back up into the atmosphere, perfectly balancing the ledger and keeping the entire global ecosystem completely stable. It's wild how perfect it is.
Now, before we wrap up, we should note that agriculture isn't purely plant-based. The massive scale breeding of animals, known as animal husbandry, runs right alongside crop farming. Think about apiculture, the large-scale rearing of honeybees for natural sugars, or pisciculture, which is the highly managed rearing of fish for protein. Combine that with poultry and cattle, and you have this incredible engineered system that rounds out our whole agricultural ecosystem. So, from the exact depth of a high-tech seed drill to the invisible balance of the nitrogen cycle, all the way to those towering silos keeping our hard-won harvest safe, crop production is just a massive marvel of human ingenuity working right alongside nature. Knowing all the complex science, the advanced tech, and the intense biological cycles involved, how does it change the way you look at the simple food sitting on your dinner plate today? I really hope this explainer leaves you marveling at the incredible high-tech journey of our food. Keep wondering, and we'll catch you next time.